Okay, everyone, we're going to get started with the presentation for this evening. Thank you all for coming. We appreciate you guys being with us here tonight. We've got a couple of special guests. We've got Derek Dimmer with Knox Ag Aviation out of York, and we have Brian Breslingham with Breslingham Consulting out of York. Both of these guys have been dealing with tar spot for several years now, and so we invited them to come hang out with us tonight and talk about some of their experiences that they've seen firsthand with tar spot. As you guys all know, tar spot is relatively new to this area, but from a disease standpoint, it's a completely different animal than anything else that we've ever dealt with. You know, we've had gray leaf spot, we've had southern rust before, but when it comes to tar spot, the latency period is so long on tar spot, it can affect your plants at a very early growth stage. And as soon as it does affect your plants, it starts to wreak havoc. And so getting your arms around it is first and foremost the number one priority. And these guys are going to explain how to do that in a little bit more detail tonight. You guys will notice a couple of things on your tables. So first of all, there's a QR code that you can scan and submit questions as we're going through the presentation here. If you guys do submit a question, we'll keep your name anonymous, but we will pause the presentation and we'll address whatever questions are submitted. So feel free to go ahead and fill out any questions that you guys may have. We encourage you to. If you do submit a question, we have a drawing for some pretty cool Milwaukee gear up here for anybody who submits questions. You'll also find a bingo card on your table, so as we're going through the presentation this evening, you'll notice some keywords that are highlighted in yellow text. If you guys see one of those yellow text keywords, mark it down on your bingo card. If you get a bingo, just raise your hand up in the air and we'll come collect your card. But we've got, I think, 7 Milwaukee prizes up here for any of our bingo winners this evening. So, vertical, horizontal, diagonal, it can be any direction, but if you get a bingo, just raise your hand in the air and we'll grab your card from him. We also have some door prizes this evening, so if you guys have not yet, go ahead and fill your name out, drop it in the bucket near the door for some cool door prizes that we're going to give away. Okay, so latency period and disease, what we've learned about managing tar spot and southern rust. First of all, I'm going to give a quick intro about Brian. Brian is an independent crop consultant, originally from Central City, Nebraska. He scouts fields in 5 counties throughout the Central City and York area. He's been an agronomist for 30 years, 15 of which have been on his own independently. He graduated from UNL in 1992 with a degree in natural resources and then served in the Marine Corps from 1992 through 2006. Serving 3 tours of duty in Somalia, Bosnia, and Iraq. So, appreciate your service, Brian. Thank you for being with us here this evening. I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to Derek and we'll get going here.
Nice. Okay, thanks, Tony. So my name's Derek Dimmer. I own a flying service in York, Nebraska. I'm partners with Ty and Tony and their family. And I would compare York, in the York area, the Holdrege area, there's a lot of similarities. I think we have really good growers in York, good aggressive farmers, you guys push yields, good soil, good dirt, good practices, heavily irrigated. And so there's a lot of similarities between York County and Phelps County, even though we're separated geographically. There's one thing we've been dealing with the last 4 years that is going to be new for you guys. And Brian and I are here to talk to you about that today and maybe give you just some tips and ideas on things that we've been doing to help manage tar spot that maybe you can take back to your farm. Okay, so yeah, talking about the tar spot life cycle. Initial infection occurs at low incidence levels, so if it's your first year dealing with tar spot, it's typically not going to be a total disaster or a yield-limiting disease. Brian and I started seeing tar spot in 2022 is when we confirmed it in York and Hamilton counties. And what we saw was just low incidence levels, close to harvest. I was doing some pre-harvest checks, checking fields, doing some bush tests, and I just started seeing these black stromata on plants in certain cases. It wasn't anything that we were super concerned with, but we did identify it as tar spot. So with that said, there's a chance you might have tar spot in your fields and don't even know it yet, depending on your geography in the state. Infected tissue dries and is returned to the field at harvest, meaning it's a soil-borne disease that will overwinter in our soils. So corn on corn acres, if you had corn on that field last year and you had tar spot in the field, it's going to be there again next year. That this disease can remain dormant for multiple years. We don't have any data that really supports how long this disease is going to stay in the soil, but you will not be able to outrun this disease through tillage practices or crop rotation. Spores, it's a very aggressive disease. Spores are going to spread from one field to another through wind and cultivation, things like that. Kind of this goes into the disease triangle a little bit, so it'll find a suitable host. The foliage is infected when those appropriate environmental conditions exist. Moderate temperatures plus extended periods of leaf wetness, which is an important call out for us because we have always a lot of leaf wetness because we're pretty aggressive irrigators. So in that, irrigation is going to create a very good environment for tar spot to exist, and the university is now supporting that as well. Tar spot life cycle, so kind of continuing on this latency period. If you haven't heard of latency period, this is going to be kind of important for tar spot. Symptoms can appear up to 21 days after the initial infection, which means if you're seeing tar spot stromata, then the infection likely occurred 2 to 3 weeks prior to that. So the spores are going to land on the plant, enter the plant, and then the biology is going to work itself out, but it can take up to 3 weeks for it to do that and for those symptoms to present themselves. This is important because we can't scout for this disease and be timely because of how long that latency period is. So really, you want to be active in spraying before you even start seeing those stromata present. So that's a little bit on tar spot. We're going to talk more about tar spot, but then we did throw a slide in here on southern rust. Southern rust and tar spot are different in the sense that southern rust is a windborne disease. Meaning it's got to blow in from the southern producing climates for us to get that. Similar to tar spot, the spores are going to land on the leaves, going to infect, and then when conditions are good, it's going to continue to reproduce, and that cycle is going to continue. The fungus does not overwinter in residue in Nebraska, or Kansas, or Oklahoma, or Texas. So southern rust has to have green tissue for that fungus to stay active and alive. So the furthest north the southern rust can overwinter would be like northern Mexico, right? Or wherever we can grow corn year round, okay? So if they're, in northern Mexico, they can plant and harvest at the same day. That's where southern rust can overwinter year round. With that said, though, Mexico is growing more corn than they have, so a good south wind is going to push that disease up here, and I'm going to continue to expect to see southern rust probably at similar levels that we have the last 2 years. 2017, this is kind of circling back to tar spot. So 2017, you can see we identified tar spot in several counties in the eastern Corn Belt. By 2019, we confirmed that disease in a lot of counties and up into the Great Lakes corn growing region. 2020, we're seeing it push heavily into Iowa. It's taken over 90% of the counties in Iowa. 2022, 21, 22, now we're in Nebraska. This is when we did confirm it in York and Hamilton counties. 23, you can just watch us, it's just creeping further and further west. 24, and then by 25, you can see it's moved well into central Nebraska. We did confirm it in Phelps County, in 24, Conty County. These were at those lower incident levels that we talked about earlier, where guys were in their field close to harvest. They were probably seeing Latency period, we kind of talked about already, but we'll touch on it again. So corn plant produces a new leaf every 2 to 3 days. From BT to B10. Most hybrids will have 19 to 20 leaves total. Tar spot's latency period is around 20 days. So you can kind of do the math there and realize that if your corn is at V10 and you see tar spot and the upper canopy, you know that that plant is likely infected maybe at V5, V6. So getting ahead of these diseases and kind of being proactive with fungicide treatments has been an important tool for us. Again, not uncommon for tar spot to be detected in V5, V8 corn. Brian, we saw a lot of that last year. And if we wait to spray until tassel, we're too late. The scalp and spray when symptoms are present was a story that we told for a lot of years. We're kind of getting away from that message and saying, we know tar spot's here, it overwinters in the soil, we're going to have it, it's going to be a yield-limiting disease. Depending on your geography, it is for us at work, and we're being a little more proactive with our fungicide passes at this point. Weed control mentality, this just kind of drives the message home. These fungicides have good residual. They're a residual product. When we think of residual products, you might normally think of a herbicide. We've talked for a while now about overlapping residuals to control small-seeded broadleaves such as palmer and water hemp. We can overlap residuals on fungicides to perform on these diseases in a similar way. So it's going to be good for us to kind of start having that mentality moving forward. And, you know, if we spray at V12, we want to come back 3 weeks later around that VTR one time, make another application, overlap those fungicides. If anyone has any questions, I can take a question. Otherwise, I'm going to pass it on to Brian Bresnahan. Brian and I are friends, independent crop shop in York. Tony gave him a nice introduction, and he did some really, really neat things this year that he's willing to share with us here this evening. So,
thanks, Derek. So I am an independent crop consultant. I don't sell anything, so we'll just put that out there right up front. I make no money on fungicides or anything. I don't sell anything. My whole business is built around my crop consulting service, and I got told a long time ago that if you get paid to have an opinion, you better have one. So here I am with having that opinion. At the same time, because you get paid for what you know and making good recommendations, it's kind of unlike me to normally give away the trade secrets. You know, it's what's built our business. But we saw so many disaster scenarios this last year in my part of the world that I don't want anybody to ever have to go through that ever again, where we've got corn that should be making, ground that should be growing 280 bushel corn. There was a lot of 190 to 230 kind of corn. And so I would rather not see that happen to anybody, especially when corn's at $3.80 and $4. That's like a double kick in the pants. So I've been asked to speak, so I was willing to, and kind of share with you my experiences. So with tar spot, thank you. So we started seeing it at the very end of the growing season of 2022. So after black layer, literally a lot of people run around trying to find any lesions at all, and we found a few. And then in 23, when we went to do our stock rot checks at black layer, we were finding it everywhere. We were finding whole leaves covered, whole plants covered, everywhere we went to do stock rot checks. So kind of a big deal. We didn't really even pick it up until the very end of August. So 3 weeks later, into September, when we were doing those checks, all of a sudden we went from hardly anything to whole plants covered. The disease had moved that fast. So then in 24, we found it about a week before tassel. And in our part of the world, I'm sure it's the same way here for you guys, we always spray at tassel time. VTR1 is really standard for us with fungicide. And so we went ahead and did that. The problem was, we had those fields where that tar spot showed up, they just kept getting blacker and blacker and blacker. And so then 3 weeks later, and that's because of that latency period that Derek hit on, that plant was infected with that disease, you just couldn't see it yet. So 3 weeks later, we went ahead and we'd actually worked with Travis Gustafson from Syngenta, and they we started splitting pivots, spray half with fungicide a second time, about 3 weeks after that initial application. And what we saw then in 24 was where we did that, we were 27 to 41 bushels side by side better where we put on that second application 3 weeks after the first application. So it made a difference, and certainly if the guy would have been paying for that himself, would have paid him money back. The problem was too many cases where we only sprayed it at tassel, we only had 200 bushel corn when it should have been 260, 270, 280. What we found was that spraying at tassel in some cases was just plain too late. We really took it to shorts on those halves of those fields. So lesson learned for me that, you know what, we're going to have scenarios where we can't wait that long. So then we fast forward then to 2025 here this last summer, and we started picking up tar spot on V5 to V8 corn, little stuff. So this had come on strong. Our corn on corn, no-till was where it showed up the first on that small stuff, but even on worked bean ground, we were picking it up at V7 and V8. So knowing, having talked to agronomists back east, knowing what we'd learned the year before, we went ahead and started making fungicide recommendations on V10 corn in that scenario. So we had, and again, I didn't fix my typo, but that's all right. So we had 55 fields there were 81 that we recommended. 55 of them got sprayed with fungicide, 25 or 26 weren't sprayed for various reasons, right? When corn is 380, if you didn't figure in another $15 to $20 of fungicide and application into the cash flow, it's just not going to happen, right? So there were those sorts of reasons. We also had an extension service and a major seed company saying don't spray, based off what they'd seen out of Purdue University research, which said just spray a tassel. I ignored that based off what we'd learned the year before, and then taking the time to read through all those different Purdue research studies, which are basically operating in 200 bushel corn environments, right? We're in the 275 to 300 bushel mentality. I didn't think that 200 bushel research applied very well to my 275 to 300 bushel corn, so I ignored that and went ahead with my fungicide recommendations anyway. We had southern rust then show up at V10, and we also had a lot of fields where we had that xanthomonas bacterial leaf streak come into them on several different hybrids that were pretty popular hybrids, and so we threw that disease into the mix as well. So we then kept track of our sprayed versus our unsprayed fields to see what the tar spot did. So in the fields where we went ahead and sprayed fungicide at tassel time, my average for the height on the corn plants for the tar spot was still down in that V5, V6 range. It stayed down there. In the ones that we didn't put fungicide on here, wow, that's true. We were actually closer to V11. The tar spot had climbed those plants and was at V11 already at tassel time. And then we also kept track of when did the tar spot hit the ear leaf, because that ear leaf is always critical for us, right? When did it get to the ear leaf? What we saw in the sprayed fields is that it didn't get to the ear leaf until into the dough stage. It kept it out. By comparison, in the unsprayed fields, it was their pollination. We already had tar spot that had climbed to the ear leaf. So we were talking two different worlds. But the proof is always in the pudding, it's in the yield, right? Before I get to that, one of the things we learned in here was in that V10 application, if we used a fungicide, because sometimes we went really cheap. So we had like a plain quadrus or a plain quilt, one AI, one mode of action. those fields didn't really differentiate themselves from the unscreened fields. What we saw was that you had to have two different modes of action, two AIs, in that V10 application to really make a difference. So that was one of the things when you see the way the data spread out, that's what you're seeing a lot of. So this is kind of one of the highlights. So this is a V10 and a VT application side by side with just a VT 298 versus a 273 for yield. 273, a lot of guys have been really tickled with this year. But so even in this high yield environment, spraying it twice made that much difference. Which was interesting, because this is the only time one of my customers actually took the time to do a true side-by-side comparison. Everything else from the combine, what they were calling and saying was, hey, I can tell exactly where the plane had to miss the power lines, or miss the acreage, or go around the trees. I can see where they made a skip with the drone. And it's 20 to 30 bushel, 20 to 30 bushel, 20 to 30 bushel. I kept hearing that from my customers. And then when one of them finally took the time to weigh it, that's where we ended up at 26 bushels. And this was really consistent for us. The sad part of this is, it was a 20 to 30 bushel difference, but unfortunately there was a lot of much worse corn there back east where I'm at, where we didn't spray fungicide twice. There was a lot of 190 to 230 on ground that should have been making 275. A lot of really bad disasters. In the fields where the Xanthomonas bacterial leaf streak came in, we had a lot of 2 to 225. Now if we put two fungicides on it, we at least stayed in the 250 range. We avoided that multiplication of stresses on the plants by at least slowing down the fungal diseases. Couldn't do anything about the bacterial disease, just like you can't with Gossamer oil, which I know you guys are very familiar with Gossamer oil. So we saw that 20 to 30 bushel pretty consistently. Waiting till tassel, like I said, again in 25, in even more cases, was just too late. We ended up with some real disasters. Corn was making 2 to 205 when it should have been 275 and 280. Like I mentioned earlier, a single mode of action fungicide didn't cut the mustard. You needed two instead of just the one. If you had susceptibility to bacterial leaf streak or Gossamer oil, your life was even worse. In the end, of the 55 fields that we sprayed at V10 and VT, 27 of them were the very best corn those guys had ever raised on those fields. Not better than their neighbor, not better than their other fields, the very best they've ever raised on those fields. So, even in that kind of a disease year, between the tar spot and the southern rust, we still chunked out those kind of yields. The rest of them, we had those fields where we only had a single AI. Didn't make a difference. And then we have to deal with everything we always have to deal with, green snap and hail, and all the other things that could screw up a cornfield yield. We did have several other fields, though, where the corn was really, really good. It was just the first or second year farming this. We didn't have a lot of history, so I didn't want to pad the numbers and throw those fields in there, too. But we had some really good yields. And even when we got into the really high yields, we hit the 280s and we were going into the 3s on hybrids that had pretty good tar spot resistance, we were still seeing disadvantage with doing the V10 and the VT applications. We also had fields where we put fungicide in either with the herbicide or just as a separate application of V5 to V6. I had a guy that he went to change from his corn herbicides, he was going to go spray beans, but instead he'd done all his clean out, but he wanted to go ahead and just spray some fungicide out on the corn just to clean the sprayer out one more time before he went to spray beans. And so we had just V5 and V6 applications ended up side by side with V10 applications, and then all of them got VT. We had some that went out with herbicide. We didn't see any difference by putting it in with that V5 to V6. For us, there was no advantage to doing that. It was waiting until V10 for that first fungicide application to make a difference for us. We did have some fields where we did them at tassel, and then we did them again at 3 weeks later. And like we saw in 24, we did have an advantage to doing that, but we didn't achieve those high yields. We were still below average compared to what we would normally expect out of those fields. 250s instead of the 270s and 280s. So, what did I tell my guys when I sat down with them this fall and through the winter? You know, what's our best plan of action? So for 2026, the thing that still makes all the way sense in the world is you still got to pick the right hybrids for your fields, right? You got to have Gauss wilt tolerance, you got to have bacterial leaf streak tolerance, drought tolerance, all the things that, you know, why you choose hybrids, all those things are still your very first step. That's the things that makes the most sense. After that, if it'll cash flow, then let's plan a V10 application with a fungicide with 2 modes of action in it, if we can cash flow it. 30 years out here, I kind of understand what we're going through right now to some degree, right? And there's just cases where that's just not going to happen, and I get it. And when that's the case, then our best bet is that good hybrid with tar spot tolerance, xanthomonas and Gauss wilt tolerance, and using a good 3-AI fungicide, one of those premium products at taxi time. That's your next best management option. And then one of the things we saw was just by happenstance, we had one of the applicators was putting in a whole mix of micronutrients in with their fungicide applications. So we had fields where we just had VT, we had all those micronutrients in there, and we at least avoided the disasters in those scenarios. We didn't have the 190 to 230. We at least stayed in that 250 kind of range. So there's something to that. I don't know exactly what it is, but that's something I've been visiting with my customers about. If we've got an applicator who's willing to put those in. We also had a field where it was the same hybrid, bean ground, planted the same day. If you came in, if you scouted it from the east side, that corn looked okay. You know, we had some disease, wasn't too bad. If you came around from the west side of it, it was getting annihilated early on by tar spot southern rust. It was 2 different worlds in the same hybrid in the same field. And, you know, in the end, one of the major seed companies was telling everybody not to spray, so it didn't get sprayed for that reason. And so was the extension service for telling everybody not to spray. And I'm watching a disaster unfold. So, as a Marine Corps officer, I was a little angry, you could say, at what was being said. And so it didn't get sprayed, and that west side of that field ended up 170 bushel corn, and the east side was 258 was the average by the time you got over there. That was the difference, and I thought, what in the wide world of sports is going on? I thought maybe it's a nutrient, you know, something in the soil. So we went ahead and grid sampled that, and my grid sample map for copper matched the yield map. And so if the copper was 0.5 and below, that's where my yields just went to crud. If they were higher than that, they were good. I don't know if that's the thing, but it's definitely something we're going to be watching for. And I'm obviously encouraging my customers to make sure we've got things like copper, whether it's going in the starter with, you know, one of those starters that's got all the different micronutrients in, or in our foliar applications, to try to maybe account for that. Well, I hope we learn more about that for this next year, but that was kind of eye-opening to see those 2 different worlds in the same field and on a good 80 bushel swing across the field. So, questions?
Did you notice any difference from the previous year's infection, the amount of inoculum that went into the ground or whatever, how it reacted in that next year?
Yeah, my corn-on-corn no-till fields, that's where we were picking up V5 tar spot. And then the stuff that had gotten worked, you know, that's when it was V7 and V8 is where it was showing up on those, so just a week later. But that corn-on-corn no-till, it came early and it came hard. You know. So we had fields where tar spot started at V5, xanthomonas at V7, and some of the rest at V10. we had the trifecta already started on those fields, and we ended up 2 to 205 yield range. If they didn't get sprayed twice. All right, guys, let me off easy. That's fine. If you think of them, just send me a QR code, and I'd be happy to answer.
Nice, thanks, Brian. We do have a couple questions here, so we'll kind of go through these. So first, Nellie was wondering who cut Tony's hair. All right. Okay, so is there a difference in brands and the effect? Is there a difference in brands and the effect that tar spot has on yield? So I think what this question is asking is, did we see a difference between different genetics, Bayer genetics, Corteva genetics? That's how I'm taking it anyway. I'll give my thought and you can share yours if that's cool. So I would say in York and Hamilton County, where we have really bad tar spot right now, the Corteva genetics probably have a bit of an advantage on tar spot right now with the way that those hybrids looked to me visually. That said, there was also some things that Corteva was doing and saying that maybe might end up kind of hurting them down the road. But you can tell us.
So genetically, basically what I saw between the Bayer and the Corteva genetics, if it was in their newer hybrids for both companies, there seems to be a marked difference in improvement in their tar spot tolerance. And you can walk their plots and just, without even looking at the signs or the stakes in the ground, you can almost pick out new hybrid, older hybrid, new hybrid, older hybrid. Bayer had a plot north of Waco, but they left it untreated. They did not spray fungicide on it at all. Had every hybrid in there, all the old ones, all their new ones. And again, you could just walk down the line and go, new hybrid, old hybrid. You could just pick it out. So I think the seed companies looks like they are really making it, trying to make some improvements. And I brought up that, it was Pioneer 13777 that had a pretty good year there. It's got pretty good tar spot tolerance, but even that hybrid we were seeing that 20 and 30 bushel and picking up the best corn we'd ever had if we sprayed it twice. And if we didn't, then it was back there in the average with everything else. So I think both companies, both sets are bringing good new genetics, and I really like to see that, because that's obviously, like I hit on, that's your first management decision for this disease is picking good hybrids for your scenario.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I probably need to walk that a little bit. The newer Bayer stuff did look really good compared to their older hybrids I'm used to looking at. So, like you said, fungicides work well on this stuff, but our best defense on tar spot is going to be to continue to sit down with your seed person and make sure you're planting hybrids that are going to work well on the disease. Okay, where tar spot has just showed up in our area, do you think a 2-spray program is feasible in 2026, feasible and necessary in 2026? So for Brian and I's area, I think 2 sprays pay. But we've also got a couple of years of tar spot pressure that these guys aren't dealing with yet. So I think that's a really good lead into what you're going to talk about a little bit with the plant health challenge. I think the only way to know if it's going to pay is to go out and try it in spots and be, reasonable and figure out and really kind of figure this thing out for yourself. I'll tell you a story that happened to me last year. So I made me feel a little bit like I got caught with my pants down a little bit. I called Brian. Brian and I get to work with some of the same clients. And so some of Brian's customers were calling me and saying, Dib, why don't you get the airplane fired up and go spray these 2 quarters? Brian went out there and is worried about tar spot. And so this wasn't something that we were doing a lot of yet. I didn't want to be the guy that was promoting 2 sprays that wasn't necessary. So I kind of sat on the sidelines a little bit. But I called Brian right away. I said, Brian, what are you seeing? What's going on? Cody just called. We're going to go do this. And he said, Derek, I've seen tar spots since V6, these fields, and we need to get ahead of this stuff right away. We need to burn this shit down and then have a nice clean canopy and tassel. And so that's what we did, and it worked really well for us. being very timely and just knowing when that needs applied and getting it on is probably far more important than what product you're using sometimes. So early, Brian and I, we were running more of a value-based, I don't want to say cheap because cheap sounds bad, but like a value-based product. And then we were coming back at that tassel our one time with maybe more of a premium brand, where we know we get a really consistent ROI. We really like those tassel treatments. It's a home run application. Let's use a better product with a little bit better residual and extend that a little deeper in the season. So we were kind of going with value brand, premium brand, we'll say. So
I would say, when you say if you have a tar spot now, was it like 2022 where you had to hunt really hard to find it, at the end of the season? Or when you went out there at Black Layer and checked for stock rot, was it everywhere, up and down plants, covering whole leaves? If it was that, I would definitely be looking at, especially in your corn on corn situations, budgeting that V10 application now, and then doing the VT as well in those areas for sure.
I don't think 2 years ago we would have seen these results. You do?
Yeah, I think in 24 we would have seen those same results based off what we saw in our stuff that got sprayed at tassel, and then again 3 weeks later.
So I guess if you just picture Phelps County being 2 years behind us in tar spot progression, then based on that, then you probably would see a positive ROI.
Yeah, especially in your corn on corn, because that's where we saw that in 24, where we sprayed at tassel, and it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And those are the fields where when we only sprayed it once, it was 200 bushel irrigated corn when it should have been 260, 70, 80. So I think, and then if you consider what it looked like at 23, end of 23, we had fields where you walked in there to do the stock rot checks, and there was tar spot everywhere. And that really showed up for us in those corn on corn fields for 24.
Another question here is application through a pivot with an estimated irrigation amount of 1,500s applied. Would that be too much water to make it work? I think we don't have a lot of chemigation that goes on in our area. We do a lot with the plains, so I'm not sure I'm quite equipped to answer that. We've done some trials.
And I typically see this with my chemicated fields. It's just a lot of water, and so that fungicide kind of wears off faster. And so in those cases, we probably are going to make 2 applications of a value fungicide, as you like to call it, and then do that one at tassel is probably going to make it premium. So we'll do a value, premium, value 3 weeks later, just because we know all 3 of those are going to run out a little bit faster.
Yeah, we're definitely diluting that product a lot more than it needs to be. I mean, these fungicides are highly systemic. They don't need a lot of water as a carrier to work really, really good. So I think we're probably using too much water. Even if you run that pit around as fast as you can, there's still water on the ground. Might not be a lot, but your shoes are going to be sticky, which means there's product on the ground. So, but yeah, great question. I think that's it. No more questions right now, but I'm going to pass the mic back to Tony, and if anyone has anything, just scan that QR code and we'll hit it up.
Okay, so I'm not going to run through this summary. We just talked about everything pretty in depth. But what I do want to bring up is we don't like standing up here giving you guys bad news about some new disease that's going to wreak havoc on your farm. It's a terrible conversation for us too. It's the last thing we want to talk about. But at the end of the day, it's something that needs to be addressed, because if tar spot goes untreated, it can literally cost you 50 or 60 bushels. And I think Brian was a testament to that this evening. To help offset the cost of some of these double treatments, because we do realize that it gets expensive, we are going to have a double spray application rebate that we are going to offer through Nebraska Land Aviation. So if you do decide to spray your corn twice, pre-tassel followed by tassel, or tassel followed by a late treatment, As long as you have your product booked by March 15th, which is a pretty hard cutoff date. So book your product by March 15th, which can be put on 0% financing in a lot of cases. Most of the name brand products from Syngenta, BASF, Bayer, FMC, you name it, they can all go on JDF, CFA, Rainbow for 0% interest. But as long as you have your fungicide booked by March 15th, if you follow through and you actually do a double application, we will reimburse you $5 an acre for every acre that gets 2 treatments. And those checks will be cut no later than December of 2026. So just something that we're trying to do to help offset the cost of those double applications a little bit. We're also going to bring back the Plant Health Challenge for 2026, and it's going to be obviously geared towards star spot. We have a lot to learn about this disease. It's new for us too. Luckily, we have people like Derek and Brian who we can lean on for information on how to control it, but at the end of the day, we still need to play with it ourselves, right? And so we are going to bring back the Plant Health Challenge in 2026. We're going to try many different products, variations, treatment timings. We're just going to basically throw the kitchen sink at it and see what works. So 3 separate fields will get you qualified for the Plant Health Challenge in 2026. We prefer that you do half treated, half untreated. It just gives us a better data set to work with when you're comparing 50% of the acres treated versus 50% of the acres untreated. It's not skewed one way or another. It's a pretty fair comparison. We will be doing NDVI imagery and ground truthing throughout the season like we always do. We'll have lots of cool prizes at the end of the year, and then in probably December of 2026, we'll have a Plant Health Challenge banquet where we present all of the data that we collect throughout the season within the Plant Health Challenge. Your name will remain anonymous. We won't say what your actual yield was. We won't talk about farm names. We won't talk about field names. All we really care about is the yield difference, treated versus untreated. So we'll combine all of that data together at the end of 2026, and we'll have a nice banquet to go through all of it with you guys and see what worked and what didn't. And then whoever does provide their yield data for their 3 Plant Health Challenges to us so that we can verify the treatment zones, your name will go into a drawing for a $5,000 grand prize that you can either take as cash payment or you can put it on your account as a credit for 2027. So we'll be promoting this here through the spring, trying to get guys signed up. It takes a lot of planning for the Plant Health Challenge, so if you guys are in here, maybe doing some chemical bookings, maybe talking about fertilizer, and you want to do the Plant Health Challenge, let's get them mapped up. That way we can begin the planning process, because it is a lot of work tracking that stuff with NDVI and ground scouting throughout the year. So moving on, just want to take like 10 or 15 minutes here real quick to talk about some new things that we're really excited about here at Grassland Aviation. We do have a line of nutritional products that are enhanced with biostimulants and amino acids, as well as a couple new adjuvants that we'll be promoting here for the first season ever. All of these products will be produced out of the facility on the west side of town. Maybe some of you guys have seen it. This has been a long time coming. If you guys have ever seen our old dry fertilizer shed, the roof was being held up by a pivot span, so we were well due for a new place to move dry fertilizer in and out of, and hopefully increase our efficiency to get you guys' acres done in a lot better timing as well. But all of our products will be produced out of that location on the west side of town, so everything will be done here in-house. On Track is a water conditioning agent. If you guys have ever, I'm sure you have, everybody uses one. Use the water conditioning agent to help lower the pH of your water, tie up the hard water molecules to prevent them from decreasing the efficacy of your herbicides. That's what On Track is meant for. It's a 1 quart per 100 gallons of water use rate. We have Conductor, which is an NIS crop oil blend. Again, 1 quart per 100 on Conductor. And then we've got our line of 5 nutritional products. The first one being Yield HP, which is our low salt starter. It's an 80-20 ortho polyphosphate starter, enhanced with zinc, manganese, and boron. It also has a full rate of fulvic acid. So a lot of the low salt starters on the market, they claim to have fulvic acid, but they don't really tell you how much. We wanted to be sure with Yield HP that for every 4 gallons that you use, you get a full rate of fulvic acid in it. So 4 gallons an acre is typically what we run on corn with Yield HP. It is safe on soybeans at a 2 gallon per acre rate. If you're not used to using low salt starters as your starter fertilizer method at planting, we do have another product that you can spike in with 1034O to help you get some micronutrients. It's called Catapult. It's got a full rate of zinc, manganese, and iron. And it's derived from linernite. So linernite is essentially the goodie out of humic acid. It's very, very refined humic acid is what linernite is. So if you're spiking it with 1034O in a strip till application, maybe you're trying to free up some of the phosphate that's tied up in your soils. Catapult also has a biological community within it that helps to metabolize the nutrients that are tied up in your dirt. So there's kind of 4 different things going on with Catapult: micronutrients, you've got the amino acid complex, you've got the biostimulant, and then you have the phosphorus metabolizing biocommunity in Catapult as well. So anytime you're using 1034O, it's a great way to spike it in and get some of those micronutrients and mineralization properties. Ground control is our liquid AMS, so if you're tired of dumping 51-pound bags like I think everyone is, you can use ground control. It is a true liquid AMS, so 115 ounces of ground control gives you exactly 3 pounds per acre of AMS. It also has a biostimulant in it that helps with stress mitigation, so if you guys are used to seeing your cupped up soybeans after you apply a herbicide, this biostimulant that's in ground control can help mitigate that a little bit, keep the leaves on hold, get them to canopy a little bit quicker. We have Flare, which is our foliar nutritional product that's also enhanced with amino acids and biostimulants. So it has a little bit of slow release nitrogen in it, and then it's 15% potash and 5% sulfur. This is a great product to put with any of your fungicide applications. Oftentimes we get questions at Tassel when we're doing fungicide, how can we get potassium in the mix? And in a lot of cases, most foliar potassium products have a pretty high degree of slow release nitrogen in them. Well, if you've already got 250 or 300 pounds of nitrogen out there, you probably don't need any more. And that's the point of flares, to get potassium, get your sulfur, but not have to invest your dollars in slow release nitrogen. And then we have the family of afterburner products. So afterburner is derived from urea, which means that it is 100% positively charged. So if you guys ever do any fertigation, if you do wide dropping, any sort of side dress work with UAN blends, you'll know that UAN is 25% nitrate, 25% ammonium, and then the rest of it is just filler, water and carriers and things like that. Because it has nitrate in it, UAN has nitrate in it, which is negatively charged, it doesn't stick to the soil particles, right? Soil particles are negatively charged, nitrate is negatively charged, which means that it's prone to leaching. But because afterburner is derived from urea and it's 100% positively charged, it sticks to the soil particles, remains in the root profile for a longer period of time, and just gives your crop more of an opportunity to utilize that investment. Something else that we're really excited about is our financing offer that we have through Nebraska Land Aviation. We've never had an in-house financing program before. Now we do. It's called Nebraska Land Prime, and you can literally put whatever you want on Nebraska Land Prime. So we've worked with several of our suppliers who are here tonight. Most of the name brand products from Syngenta, BASF, Bayer, even Helena on their HPG stuff. They all qualify for 0% financing, whether it be through JDF or CFA. You can put the Nebraska Land Nutritionals, so 2027. But for the 0% portion, that wouldn't expire until November 30th of 2026. So you can put all those products on CFA, 0% interest, and don't have to pay for it until after harvest. And then anything that doesn't qualify for 0%, so any of the fertilizer or generic chemical, you can also put those on CFA. However, they are at a prime interest rate through November 30th of 2026. So really excited about CFA. They've been great to work with, super easy to apply. They have a very, very fast approval process. Some of the applications that we've turned in, you literally submit them and within an hour, CFA has them approved. So really simple form that you can fill out on your phone. If you guys are interested, we'd be more than happy to give you some more information this evening if you guys would like to learn more. And then one last thing, we do have an email update letter that we periodically send out. We're not going to spam you guys' emails with a bunch of garbage, but if you guys are interested in fertilizer updates, pricing movement, the fertilizer markets, the chemical markets, special events that are going on, financing deadlines, we'll periodically send out email updates and try to keep you guys informed on some of that stuff. So if you'd like to sign up for the email update, you can scan that QR code. You can visit our website, punch in your email, and we'll send you guys those updates whenever they come out. With all that being said, that's all we got for you tonight. We do want to take a minute to thank everyone for coming in, and thank you for your business. We genuinely do appreciate you guys' business. We know that the commodity world isn't the greatest right now, and you guys have a lot of different options as far as who you purchase your chemical and fertility products from. And we appreciate that you guys turn to us and give us an opportunity to provide those types of products for you. So thank you guys for your business. We appreciate it very much. We're looking forward to working with you in 2026. If you guys have any questions, we'll be around here for the rest of the evening, but thank you guys very much for coming.
One more slide I wanted to just point out, there was a question about chemigation. Our position on chemigation is it's always better than not doing anything. But we're in the application world, and the University of Nebraska has actually been doing a lot of work on chemigation versus aerial. And it goes back to western Nebraska, where there's very few aerial applicators and a lot of pivots. And what we've seen out there is an increase in resistance to bifenthrin in particular, which is what these slides demonstrate. And I apologize, I was just at my recertification this week, and the extensions, they're doing some work, and this was the best picture I could get of it. But what this shows, and the reason they're studying this, is because in areas of high chemigation, they're seeing an increased incidence of resistance to bifenthrin, and it has to do with dosage. So when you're applying a product through a pivot, it certainly is better than not doing anything. But you're also ending up with a very low dose on the leaf surface, because as goes the water, so goes the insecticide to the soil. Whereas with aerial application, our target on the plant is the ear leaf and higher. So we're leaving more of that chemistry on the leaf. The University of Nebraska had this slide this week. At the top it says residue level on corn leaves. The left chart is bifenthrin, and you can see the amount of residual from the aerial application versus chemigation. The first two are the tassel, the higher part of the canopy. The second two are the leaves. Now, a lot of times we think when we chemicate, we're going to get better canopy penetration and better activity down to the profile of that plant. But what this shows is actually there's very little residual left from bifenthrin after a chemigation application versus aerial, where we have many, many, many times more. So the left one is bifenthrin, the right one is Vanacor, very similar to both insecticides. This would be true of anything. So if you're putting a fungicide onto the pivot, it is certainly going to be better than not doing anything at all. But if you want the most residual, we need to leave that product on the leaf surface. And this is University of Nebraska data that supports that. Any other questions? Not Goldman Sachs, Tony.
You want another one?
Yeah, come on.
Okay. Where can I get liquid peppermint?
Get what?
Liquid peppermint.
Yeah, well, so the way the university, Nellie's question was, where can you get fipronil, which is region? And the answer is, because of all the places in our society where fipronil is labeled, the bucket that the USDA is going to allow is full. So it's still used in home pest control. Our animals have it. It's still widely used, but the USDA's position is it's used at the maximum level they can apply to our society, so it's never going to get labeled. Interestingly enough, when it comes to DECT stem in soybeans, it is 100% controlled. And they use it in their research trials to compare to other insecticides. But they do it as a seed treatment, and it's 100% control on DECT stem season long. But we'll never have a label. Any other questions? Thanks again to our guests here tonight. Oh, yeah. So these are, is there anyone else who had bingo cards? Who had a bingo? Okay, just write his name on.
You got one in the back.
You got one in the back? So this was Tony's way to get people to pay attention tonight to key words. So we'll put all those who have bingo in for a drawing for these 7 prizes up here.
There's always something that happens.
Okay, so the first winner, come up, pick your prize, Liz Burns. Eli Swanson. Adam King. Mark Burns. Blake Johnson.
This is a car in Phoenix, and it's got like crazy battery life.
Vivian Burns.
This will be 2 weeks. Wow. Yeah, that's awesome.
Trevor Crow. Thanks again for everybody coming tonight. I should have steak sandwiches ready and looking forward to visiting with everyone here tonight.
Thank you. Thanks again.
Hey, thanks for selling me out.
I think everyone knew there was only one guy in the room. I didn't even see it.
I did that one time.
Yeah.
Boys, seeing them around, this is putting questions.
Yeah.
Both can sit there and do this and then look right over at.
They knew it was you. That's great. Well known for that. Oh, yeah. Great.
Hey, thanks for
Yeah.
Mike Nelson.
Okay, Brian.
Just side parcel.
Okay, yeah. So you avoid that disease. Yeah.
No, last year,
Yeah.
I'm one of those where, okay, I got like 3 small bullets. It's like, it'll do it in 10 hours.
Right.
It's their fast.
So we've got some guys just because the academics we're gonna do 3 shots of generic cortex out, 18 days. Just
So it's
Through the pit.
no big deal.
Yeah.
When I ran, I think it's like, they estimated like 12 pages.
right.
Yeah. What? But, I did that early. But, there was a partner, I've got 5 gallons of water. Add like, foliar kind of thing, blend with it.
Yeah. Just go. Yep. Oh yeah.
Last thing, 10 gallon water.
Yeah, Derek sprayed 7 feet 10, but we had a lot of people that got right. Yeah. Just because the kids they got their own sprayer, right? Might as well go and use it. V10 is here. Yeah. 12 is about here, but you can still get it to 12 for people with a John Deere. Yeah. So, yeah, it'll work really well. And again, you can use the generic Cortex on it's going to cost you 6-7 years. Yeah, it's worth it.
But I was thinking like,
Yeah. Then Kennedy after that.